Ms. Bianca Gates is the co-founder and CEO of Birdies, the company that created a new category of footwear with stylish flats and that are secretly slippers. Prior to Birdies, Ms. Gates was a sales executive at Meta, where she worked with retail and gaming executives to help them leverage their data and their social graphs to scale their businesses. Ms. Gates grew up in Southern California as the oldest child of Latin American immigrants and is a graduate of the University of California, Irvine. Now, we asked all of you guys to watch a quick video before this, like an interview on the Today Show, but if you didn't, I can quickly summarize it. Essentially, Ms. Gates and our co-founder, Marissa Sharkey, identified the problem of a lack of fashionable shoes for the home. So they set out to create the perfect indoor slipper that were stylish enough to entertain company and comfortable after a long day. They started with Googling how to make shoes and invested $100,000 to start the business. They launched Birdies 9 months later with just 1,800 pairs of slippers and could only start with full sizes. They weren't able to do half sizes yet. They had no money for advertising, so they focused on trunk shows and pop-up sales among friends and family, and eventually in 2016, the brand took off when the Duchess of Sussex and actress Meghan Markle posted a video wearing one of their slippers. To date, Birdies has sold more than 1 million pairs of shoes. A round of applause for Ms. Bianca Gates.
Well done. Thank you.
Perfect. So we're just going to briefly introduce ourselves. My name is Sophia. I'm from San Francisco, and I'm one of the co-people who runs Launchpad.
Yeah, my name is Philip. I'm from Hong Kong. I'm also one of the co-founders of Launchpad.
And then my name's Sophie. I'm from Indianapolis, and I'm the COO of Launchpad.
Okay, I'm just going to ask the first question. Could you please start by telling us a little bit about your passion and joy for learning, and how has this fueled your journey from UC Irvine to Birdies?
Okay, well, first of all, I gotta say, I'm just so impressed with what you're doing, Sophia and team, with starting your own business and accelerator there. I am just blown away. I gotta tell you, you guys are leap years ahead of where I was as a sophomore in high school. So very much well done. One day I want to interview you and how you had the courage to start this yourself. When I saw your question around my passion for learning, I guess I've never thought about it that way, because I have to tell you, I was not a great student. I did not show up for school ready to learn. I was not that eager student. School for me was social hour and my time to see friends and meet new people. But what I will say is I've always had a very profound sense of curiosity, which I guess is another way of saying learning, although the academic learning as we see it just always seemed very stodgy and boring. But I've always been curious about how the world works. And growing up as an immigrant here, my parents didn't know much about the culture or about business. My dad was a teacher, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And at an early age, I realized people with money have power and influence, and what does that look like? What does living with money feel like, and being able to buy the shoes that you want? And so it was that curiosity of how do those people live their lives and what do they do to get there that led me to just asking all of the most basic questions that most people are too afraid to ask, but I would just raise my hand and ask. So it wasn't learning in the traditional sense, but it was definitely a profound sense of curiosity to spread my wings in the world and just try everything in a short amount of time that we have on this world, on this planet.
So in terms of using that curiosity, when you were looking for a co-founder, how did you meet them? How did you figure out that you guys were a great fit for each other and that you would complement each other's skills?
That's a great question. To be perfectly honest, we got very lucky. We met in 2005. I don't even want to know how old you were then. Oh my God. You weren't even born yet. Oh dear Lord! We met in 2005. I was living in Manhattan, and I was dating my now husband, who was going to Stanford Business School out west. We met in New York, and he started business school, and he met another classmate of his, and they realized that their girlfriends were both living in New York City, so they introduced us, and we ended up totally hitting it off on our own and having a great adventure in New York City. But she's very different than me, and she always has been. In every sense of the term. Just you look at us, she's petite, I'm tall, she's blonde, I'm brunette, she's Jewish, I'm Catholic. She went to all these fancy schools. She went to Cornell. She went to Wharton Business School. I did not. And so in every sense, we were very different, but we both shared a passion for learning and working really hard and just kind of like stretching our potential to see how far we could get. And so we had fun doing that together. It wasn't until 9 years later when we both ended up in California and I was working at Meta, and I continued to entertain friends and family, which I love doing. And I was tired of walking around barefoot, and I talked to her one night, and she was leaving for a job and looking to transition, and I just said, hey, I'm thinking about, solving this problem, the social slipper problem. What do you think? And she's like, oh my God, I'm transitioning careers. I have been entertaining recently a lot wearing like purple UGG slippers, which does not really go with my outfit. Why don't we do this together and try it out? And so it really was serendipitous. It was natural. I didn't overthink it. In hindsight, it was the best decision, but it was by total coincidence that it worked out, that she's the yin to my yang and vice versa.
Our next question is, what were the first months of Launchpad like? And can you take us through the process of getting funding, designing your first shoe, and selling your first running?
Yeah, I wish I had this like really strategic answer for you guys. Like we sat down and we laid out a strategy and everything went according to plan, and it was just like none of that. I think, we both sort of got caught up in problem solution, and there was no strategy. There wasn't like, and then we're gonna launch, and then we're gonna go raise capital, and then I'm gonna quit my job. Like it was it was so far-fetched that this thing was actually gonna work that we weren't even thinking about that. The biggest priority was like, how the heck do we design and make these shoes when neither of us are designers, neither of us have worked in retail, and neither of us know how to make a shoe. So like that for us was the biggest problem. I was certainly not going to leave my amazing day job at Meta to start a slipper company. That seemed absurd. And anytime I would talk to people about this idea that I had of this social slipper, everybody in retail told me it'll never work. Because if you go to retail stores, they only sell slippers in November, December. It's not an annual business. It's a bad business. Slippers are like $10 each. No one's going to pay more for that. It's a bad idea. So we just sort of tackled it as forget about this as a business. What would this fictitious new shoe look like? And so we knew exactly what we wanted. We went shopping. We cut up a bunch of shoes, and we set it on the table, and we started to duct tape all the components. And so we took what's in a Nike Air. You bounce around, and you can serve your friends and family around the house because you're bouncing around. You have a rubber sole so that you don't slip inside your home. And then we just wanted a traditional plastic smoking slipper silhouette, just something very basic and simple. And we got excited and carried away about what this new type of shoe would look like. And it wasn't until, and we each decided that we could part with $50,000 each, which was a lot of money for us. But that was it. There was no more money. And looking back, $100,000 to start a footwear business that manufactures their shoes overseas is not a lot of money at all. But we were so naive, and we just thought, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Let's just start. And we asked our neighbors and our friends, hey, do you know anybody that knows anybody that can manufacture these shoes overseas? What does that look like? And somebody introduced us to somebody. We were not picky about who we were working with because we recognized that, who the heck was going to want to work with two women who had no background in shoe manufacturing and help us launch a company? Nobody. So if anybody had a pulse and was slightly interested in helping us, we would take their help. So we had our landscape architect basically design the shoe for us. We sent it over to a factory overseas. We couldn't do a lot of back and forth. We couldn't afford half sizes because we had to buy 1,800 units as a factory minimum, and that took all of our money. And so I'll never forget the day that the shoes arrived. This was in November of 2015. This was about 8 months after this idea came to us. And we didn't have an office. And I was still working full time. So we had just given this manufacturing company in China Marissa's home address. And 2 months later, she calls me in November and she says, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. There's a massive truck in front of my house, and they're claiming that they have all of our 1,800 pairs of slippers. And I was like, what? Oh my God, they've arrived. Why are they at your house? And she's like, because you're such an idiot. You gave them my home address. And I'm like, well, I don't know. We're just filling out forms. And so she had her neighbors help her take all the boxes out of the truck into her garage. And she said to me, oh my God, you got us into this mess. You have to help us get out of this. It never dawned on me that the day would come that our shoes would arrive, and we never had a plan for what's next. how do we sell these? How do we market these? Like, we just never had a plan. And so, naturally, the first thing we did was like open up all the shoes to make sure they weren't just a bunch of rocks after we had paid them all of our money. And they straight up, there were our shoes in there. They fit poorly, obviously, because these were loafers, and so if they don't fit you snug, they're gonna fall off your feet. So that was a problem. But we were excited that they were there. They had our logo that we had spent like $200 to design. And then the next step was like, now we need to get these out of her garage. And I said, listen, I don't have a plan, and again, I'm working full time, and I have 2 little kids at home. But I think between the 2 of us, we have 1,800 friends on Facebook. If each of our friends buys a pair, or buys a pair and gives them to a friend, we're out of this. Like, this was fun, this was crazy, let's just recoup our $50,000 back each, and let's like move on, this is nuts. And so that was the plan. So we both posted on our Facebook pages, and we just said we launched this business. We took pictures on our iPhone of the shoes. For 30 bucks a month, we got a Shopify account. We uploaded our photos there. And as you would imagine, every day friends would start buying the shoes, and we would get the little cha-ching on Shopify on our phone that says a new customer has ordered. And we would like run to our phones, and we were like, oh my God, who ordered? And it was always like a friend or a family member, which was awesome. We were so appreciative, but we were like, damn. Like, I wish it was somebody we didn't know. Like, we're just selling to our families. And once we started to like sell a little bit more, it was Thanksgiving time, and I think that's when the light bulb moment came on of like, yeah, what do I wear around the table during Thanksgiving when I have some jeans on and a cozy sweater and like I don't have anything on my feet? So sales really started to pick up, and then editors started to hear about the social slipper in San Francisco. And so one editor reached out and said, can I write a story about this social slipper idea? And I said, of course. And that came out on February 14th, 2016. I'll never forget that day. It was a Sunday, because we did about $10,000 in sales that one day. And it was the first time that we were getting sales from people that we did not know. I mean, we were literally stalking our customers. We were like, okay, we're like 1 degree separated from this person in Wisconsin and 2 degrees separated from this person. And then all of a sudden we're like, we have no idea who this person is, and they've heard about us and they're buying our shoe. This is amazing. And the idea at the time was like, even if 100% of the people return the product because the product was not great, at least we've identified that there is a market for something like this, and then we can spend more money and time and energy on perfecting the product. So that was that. We finally got through our first 1,800 units, and we then had to design the next collection. And I'm like, listen, I'm not a designer. That was a fluke that we got through these shoes. It was a fluke that we had editors writing about us. Like, this is nuts. And the person that was helping us design and manufacture our shoes was like, well, if you're not going to design the next collection, I'm going to fire you ladies. You have no idea what you're doing. This is a waste of my time. And I was like, yeah, I sort of agree with you. Like, this was kind of like a crazy idea that just took off, and now we don't know what to do. And like literally that same week, the company that manufactures all of J. Crew's shoes emailed me and Marissa and said, hey, listen, I've been reading about you guys in the press, and what you guys are doing is fascinating about the social slippers. If you, like, we would love to work with you guys to design your shoes and help you manufacture if you're open to it. And we were like, oh my gosh, how do we play it cool and at the same time just be like, yes, please. So they did take this business. We launched our next collection in the fall of 2016. I ended up taking a 2-month sabbatical from Facebook to see if I could really grow this business if I invested more of my time. And the business just started to really grow fast. The product was better, the collection was stronger, more editors were writing about us. And at that point, Marissa and I just decided, like, gosh, if we were to part with one of these shoes and give them to a celebrity to wear us, who would it be and why? And so that's when we had to get very disciplined about who is our muse, who is Birdie. And we went through every A-lister that exists, and we were like, no for this reason and no for that reason. Not that we could get in front of any of them, but we were just like, who would be our muse? And we ultimately landed on Meghan Markle, who at the time was on a cable show called Suits. She was not a megastar, but she embodied everything that Birdie was for us. And we thought, okay, we're gonna find a way to center a pair of our slippers. And we did, and so she pretty early on started wearing us a lot. She had an Instagram account with 1 million followers called The Tig. She would wear us frequently. She would wear us on set. She would wear us around town. Sometimes the paparazzi would capture her and tag us. Sometimes they wouldn't. And then in early 2017, there was like speculation that she was dating Prince Harry, and she was posting about herself traveling to London, and I thought, oh my God, can you imagine if she's dating a prince? Like that would just be like incredible. And sure enough, they were dating. And in 2017, it was time for me to say goodbye to Facebook because the business had really started to like move faster than we could keep up with the demand. And it was the first time I really thought to myself, wow, I don't have a job anymore that's paying my bills. I'm not making any money. And remember, growing up, my dream was to be independent and make money. And now here I am, without a real job selling shoes on the internet. But I believed in myself, and I realized we needed a little bit of capital, and that's when I decided to raise a little bit of money. So we raised $2 million later that year in 2017, and I'll never forget on Cyber Monday, which is like the biggest day in retail, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced their engagement, and the global press went wild, and they started tagging every one of Meghan Markle's favorite fashion brands, and they would say her favorite shoes are a slipper fit for a princess called Birdies. And we just couldn't believe it. We ended up having a 30,000 person wait list. We sold out of all of our shoes. And so I think the moral of the story is you can see we just started with not much, but once you're finally out there, you can learn and improve, learn and improve, learn and improve. And then people hear about you, people want to help you because they see that you've already started and tested. And so it's I just tell everybody, if you have an idea, just start. You don't have to overthink it. It shouldn't be overcomplicated. You don't have to jump into how do I raise capital and what's the strategic plan for the next 10 years. Just start small, and hopefully, if it's the right product market fit, you'll just have a lot of momentum behind you.
And I think building off of just launching as quickly as possible, as you started to distribute your shoes and sell more units, how did you start to prioritize your customers' needs? For example, could you tell us about how you use surveying and data to pivot Birdies to the stylish slipper, and how you contribute to this and survey your customers?
Yes, that's very important because, here I thought that the whole world wanted these stylish slippers for the home because I did, and that was why we started. And it turns out a small number of people did want that. But over the next couple of years, we were getting a lot of unhappy customer complaints saying that they were dissatisfied that for $140, their shoes were sort of wearing and tearing very quickly. And I thought, that's impossible. I wear my Birdies all the time. They are in great shape. How are these disintegrating for all these customers? And so in the summer of 2018, we hired an intern, and we just said, your job this summer, she was a sophomore in college, and we said, your job this summer is to email all of our tens of thousands of customers and ask them, how are you wearing your Birdies? So at the end of the summer, she prepared a small presentation for me and Marissa, and it showed a graph, and it said over 75% of our customers are wearing their Birdies as shoes everywhere, traveling to work, to shopping, wherever they were going. And I said, well, there you go, that's the problem. They're misusing their Birdies. These are not intended to be worn outside of the home. And so it was that moment where, as a founder, you think to yourself, do I stay focused, as people tell you to stay focused, on the initial problem I was solving, which is a stylish slipper for the home? Or do I pivot and follow where the customer is taking the product, which is outside of the home? And so we went back and forth for several days, actually, and I was not interested in leading a shoe company. I really wanted to form community and conversation at home and have women feel beautiful and comfortable in their shoes from head to toe. And so it was a real big question that I had, and then ultimately I just thought, we do have investors now. They probably want to make a big return on their money. The bigger market opportunity is going to the outdoor footwear market, and so let's just give it a try. So we decided to start reimagining our slippers with the same comfort features on the inside, but bigger soles on the outside for more durability for outdoor wear. And at the time, we had bought the domain birdieslippers.com for $20 a year on GoDaddy. But birdies.com had been taken. And we thought, gosh, if we're going to be a real footwear company, we cannot have slippers at the end of our name. So that was a big struggle of trying to figure out who owned the domain birdies.com. And for many years, if you went to birdies.com, it was two female cartoon characters standing on a putting green golfing. And so it had not changed for years since we had first come up with this idea. And so we had worked with a lot of domain brokers, and finally one was able to get in touch with the owner of Birdies.com. I think he lived in Dubai. He had bought it for his wife many years ago, and their vision was to one day create a golf brand named Birdies. And I thought, oh shoot, there's no way we're going to be able to buy this name from him. And so I called my trademark attorney and I just said, I know we've trademarked Birdies for footwear globally. Does anybody own the trademark for Birdies for apparel globally? And she said no. And I said, okay, we're going to trademark Birdies for all apparel and footwear now globally. So we did that. And then I reached back out to the domain owner and I said, well, it's impossible now for you to launch with Birdies as an apparel company because we now own the rights for that. And so that was the beginning of the negotiation, and ultimately we ended up buying it for a hefty 6-figure price tag, but we were making an investment in the future of our company, knowing that we were no longer just going to be a slippers company, but we're going to be a full-fledged, stylish flatbed secretly a slipper.
And at the end of this year, we're planning on doing a pitch day for Launchpad. So we were wondering, when you pitch to investors or potential consumers, what is your selling point, and what differentiates Birdies from all other shoe brands?
That's a good question. I had initially reached out to Kirsten Green, who's the managing partner and founder of Forerunner Ventures, a $1 billion consumer fund here in San Francisco. And I had reached out to her because people were like, oh, if you're gonna start a company, you should probably raise money. That's what people do in San Francisco. And I reached out to her and she was like, thanks, yeah, cute idea. But we're not looking to invest in a slipper shoe company right now. Great, fine. So we just thought, okay, we don't need that capital. We'll put in 50 grand each and we'll start doing it. And so we ended up with very little designing and launching our own product. And so by the time we got to pitching Kirsten Green 2 years later, we had already proven that we were scrappy founders, that we were not going to give up, that any no was just going to be like, great, we're going to keep moving in a different direction, and you're just not going to be on this rocket ship. It doesn't mean it's going to slow us down. You're not going to make any money. And so 2 years later, when we went to go pitch her, we met for breakfast, and 40 minutes into the breakfast, as we were talking about anything other than business, she just simply said, okay, what's your plan? And so I gave it to her in 15 minutes, and she said, I'm going to invest $1 million right now. And I was like, oh my God, all we're looking to invest is $1 million. And she said, I know, I'm going to be your only investor. I said, but I've already raised a friends and family round of $1 million. And she said, well, then I'll take it, I'll give you another $1 million. And I almost fell out of my chair, and I called my husband, and I was just like, is this real? Like, what's happening? And so we ended up raising $2 million because I had already committed $1 million to friends and family. So I guess my point is, like, do as much work as you can before you pitch, and show the investor, especially when you're early on in this, that like they're betting on you, they're not necessarily betting on the idea. I don't know if you guys use Slack, but if you haven't heard of the story of the founder of Slack, like he raised a ton of money to start a video game company, and that wasn't working out, and his investors were losing faith. And at the end of the day, he's like, crap, we're just messaging each other internally about how the hell to like build this video game company. And that ended up becoming the multi-billion-dollar idea that later would be called Slack. And it was like an output from the initial idea. So the idea is like they're going to invest in you as a founder, that you're going to figure out how to make something amazing. It's not so much about the idea. So show them that you are confident in yourself, and no matter what, if they don't invest in you, they're going to miss out. It's not that it's going to stop you from doing what you want to get done. Investors have FOMO. Right? So like make them believe that they're going to miss out if they pass on you.
A couple more questions. So in terms of running a company, it requires a ton of endurance, to continue to build it up, to not lose necessarily inspiration. So have you ever felt like you've lost inspiration at Birdies? And if so, have you?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever lost inspiration. There's definitely moments where you're just like, this is just really, really hard. And I'm tired. There's a lot of problems that you're solving. It's really hard. But I'll say this, if I was in the business of simply selling really good shoes, I think I would have given up a long time ago, because that's not interesting to me. And so from the very beginning, we knew we wanted to be a mission-driven company, because no matter what, even in the hardest of times, it was that mission that was going to carry us forward. And so for us, we're like growing our platform, and now we have a voice and a platform and people listening, and we want to use it for good, and we want to lift up all women. That's what we see at Birdies, is we want to lift up all women and help them soar in our flats. And so, you know, in those hard days, it's not about selling shoes, it's about making sure that we're never giving up on our mission and we're leveraging our platform for good. And so if you're in the business of doing something greater than the day-to-day stuff, you will never feel like you're giving up hope.
So right now we'd like to open it up to the audience. If there are any audience questions. Oh, Frank.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you did 2 rounds of fundraising, one at the beginning where you both raised $50,000 each, and one where you raised $2 million. So could you just tell us a little bit about the fundraising process?
Yeah, so the first time Marissa and I just invested $50,000 of our own money. We went out externally to raise money in 2017 when we raised $2 million, $1 million from friends and family and $1 million from 4 Honor Ventures. And then we went on to raise our Series A. That was another $8 million round a year later. But, you know, it goes back to what we started off with is my deep-rooted interest in, just curiosity. You know, in Silicon Valley, people are always talking about raising money. And I'm like, what does that feel like? What does one do in the boardroom? How does one raise money? What does that look like? And I was so curious. I've always wanted to play in the game. I didn't want to be a spectator of the game. And so I was like, let's raise money. I don't know how to do this, but we'll figure it out. And so I started calling people and asking them what happens, what does a deck look like when you're presenting? And I was fully prepared, but I'll tell you my most embarrassing moment when I was closing the deal with Kirsten Grain, this $1 million investment from her, and it was our first institutional money, and a pretty famous investor in consumer. And she calls me up and she's like, hey, listen, we're doing diligence, which is we're just finalizing the details of this investment. Can you tell us who's on your cap table? And I was like, oh my God. In my head, I was like, what the hell's a cap table? What is she talking about? And I'm like, yeah, well, it's really complicated. So I'm going to have to get back to you. I'm going to need some time to get back to you. And she was like, really? Okay. I'm like, yeah, we're just it's real complicated. And so I get off the phone with her and I scramble and I call my co-founder. She wasn't picking up. I call my husband and I'm like, what the hell is a cap table? What is she asking me for? And I learned in a pretty embarrassing way that a cap table, it's a document that just says who owns what percentage of the company. And it literally was just I own 50% and Marissa owned 50%. It was that simple. And I think I freaked her out because I told her how complicated it was. But it was one of those moments where I was like, I'm such an idiot. Why didn't I just fess up and just say, I don't know what a cap table is? Listen, I'm not an investor. So why should I know what a cap table is? I'm a footwear founder. I should know about my shoes. But don't be afraid to ask what they're talking about. Because now I made myself look sillier by trying to cover up to pretend that I knew what I was talking about, when in fact I had no idea, and it could have totally blown up the deal, by the way. She could have gotten my cold feet because I'm such an idiot. She didn't, thankfully. But you know, raising money is just like asking a girl out on a date or a boy out on a date. It's nerve-wracking. You don't know what's going to happen. Everybody has their own way of doing it, and at the end of the day, you want to be in partnership with somebody who you like, who you believe in, and who you think you're going to have fun with. And so keep it simple when asking for money. And again, sorry, you're not asking for money. You're giving them the opportunity to make money by investing in your business. It's the way that you should position yourself when raising capital.
Hi, I'm so for advertisement, I don't have a Facebook account with 1,000 followers, so what can I do? I also don't have no money for advertising right now. So what are my options? I mean, apart from reaching out to my immediate family and friends.
Just start with family and friends. We didn't pay any money for Facebook ads until we raised $2 million. We asked our friends, hey, listen, we have 1,800 shoes we need to sell. Can you host a trunk show? So we had every night we would have a different friend invite 20 or 30 of their friends to their home. You know, they'd serve food and drinks, and Marissa and I would come in, we would tell the founding story, we'd have all the shoes there, we'd give them a 20% discount if they bought right there on the spot, and we would sell 12 shoes at a time. And then that person would introduce to the next person to sell at their house, and then the schools were like, hey, we're doing a winter fest, and we're doing a fundraiser, why don't we sell? I sold at Hamlin, when all my friends who are parents there were sipping champagne at an evening event, in Stanwood Hall. I was there selling slipper shoes to everybody. I had no ego, but I was like, anybody who's gonna give me an opportunity to sell to new people, I was there. And I did that for the first year and a half, and totally humbly doing so. And that led to other people wanting to buy, and it led to, so don't think of what you don't have at your disposal, think about what you do have at your disposal, and you can do that. There's not one way to grow a company.
Hi, I'm Drew. I was wondering,
Hi, Drew.
how did you network and get to know all these people in high places that can help you further your company?
Just the way you guys are right now. Just having the courage, like Sophia did, to reach out. Honestly, Sophia, I have a lot of people that are asking me to speak at their conferences and at their events, and I've become very tight with my schedule. I want to spend time with my family, I have to run a business. But when I received your email, the email was so strong, and I was like, how can I say no? You just killed it. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And so, now Sophie and I have an open email conversation and a thread. So if there's something else or whatever else she needs, I'd be more than happy to help. And it continues on that way. So same with Cheryl Sandberg. I don't know if you guys know Cheryl Sandberg. She was the chief operating officer of Meta forever. And when I started, I had the courage to go up to her and just say, you're the reason I'm here. I love what you're doing. I've read so much of what you've written in the press. And literally that day when I met her, she invited me to her house for dinner. And I was like, oh my God. And we developed a relationship from that point on. So have the courage to meet people, but don't waste their time either. I'm not saying go and find a mentor and go and just ask anybody. That's okay. This is like my fast meeting of the day.
Hi, I'm Michael. I have a question about your venture raising process. Obviously, the venture market is really slowed down now. But I was wondering what that was like in 2017. Was it easy to raise? Were there a lot of investors involved in money? And sort of after receiving so much money and being a two-person team, how was it like maintaining brand identity and balancing that with investors' wants? And separate question, sorry, I know a lot of questions, but I'm wondering how was it 13 months is very fast in the Series A. So I was wondering how you guys were able to scale up. Yeah.
Wow, great questions. Are you going to become a venture capitalist at some point? Those are great questions. Well, let's just take a step back. So when we raised our seed, we were very much a stylish slipper company. And I'll never forget, Kirsten Green said, we are already investors in a shoe company, so we're making an investment in a slipper company. I said, of course, that's what I want to do. We're a stylish slipper company. The business exploded in 2017 and 2018. And so Norwest Ventures, who led our Series A, they came to us to preempt an A round, which is why it happened so quickly. We did not have to go and fundraise. And they came to us and they just said, we want to invest. We're seeing this momentum picking up. We think what you guys are doing is phenomenal. How much money do you guys want and at what valuation? And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't think we need the money, but what should we do? So I sat down with Kirsten Green and we just said, okay, if we were to really gun it and grow fast, how much money do we think we need and what's the right appropriate amount of equity that we would give up, which is basically how you come up with valuation. And so that's how we got to $8 million. But I'll never forget, the night before we did the deal and the deal closed with Norwest, the managing partner took me out for dinner and said, listen, just so you know, we are looking to invest in a footwear company. Slippers is niche. We're going global with shoes. And I was like, oh shit. My other board member is we've invested in a slipper company, not a shoe company. And now these new guys, we've got $8 million to invest in a shoe company. And so that moment of panic where you're just like, what do? You just play dumb and you're like, sure, yeah, whatever. But I did end up calling my initial investor and I said, listen, for us to get this money, this is what we're thinking, we're still gonna stay super comfortable, are you on board with that? And she was like, listen, if the market opportunity is that much bigger and we're gonna make more money, sure, let's do that. So that was great. And then, the identity of the company completely evolved from the stylish slipper to a shoe company. And You know, the more people you hire, the more investors you have around the table, the more feedback you're getting on which direction to go. And I think that's one of the most challenging things of being a founder is everybody loves to give you advice, but it's your job not only to listen to the advice, but to identify which advice you're going to take and what advice you're not going to take. And that's the hardest part of it all. So you want to surround yourself with really smart people that you trust and they understand the vision of where you're headed.
I'm Ashley. So I was wondering, as so as high school students who are interested in starting our own company, we obviously have a kind of limited amount of resources. So what would your best advice be for kind of identifying and then leveraging our advantages as best as possible?
Do not think about the resources you don't have. Like, that's going to kill you. Like, every founder has no reason to be a founder. There's no reason to be a founder. It's all crazy. You are crazy if you want to start a company. There are more reasons not to start a company than there are to start a company. It's a bad idea. You guys got one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. You're going to go on to do great things. It's a bad idea to start a company. However, if you're super crazy and you're so determined, then you're going to run through walls and you're going to forget about all the reasons you can't start a company and you're only going to look at the things that you have to start a company. So don't ever tell yourself that I don't have these resources. The number of times I've heard a founder say, well, it's just really hard to raise capital right now, or I can't get funded, or if I only had an idea, or if I only had whatever. And I'm like, sure, everybody can see that. Like, I don't have all the answers either, but I did have a few things, and that's what I ran with. That's what I ran with. And in fact, I couldn't even quit my day job to start this company. So when we talk about like not being able to like raise capital, I couldn't even afford to quit my job, and I had 2 kids. But you know, I was so determined that I was going to make it work. So it comes down to the founder to say, I don't care about all of the risks and all the reasons why I can't. I'm just going to look at all of the opportunities that I do have, and I'm going to double down and leverage those.
Hi, my name is Ryan. I have a question. So, a lot of companies like Alibaba are making it incredibly easy for people to bring their products to market, their ideas to market, because they're lowering MOQ costs and in general just making it a lot easier to connect to suppliers. So how have you seen that personally affect your business as a relation to the competition that you've been getting recently, like the last year or so?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like the barrier of entry is low now. Anybody can start a company. Anybody can, you know, for $30 open a Shopify account and have a website up and running. You don't need to hire a designer. I remember a good friend of mine, Andy Dunn, who started a men's clothing company called Bonobos years ago. He had to invest like $200,000 to have an engineer develop a website for him, and he had to give him a lot of equity in the company to do that. Like fast forward, you don't have to hire any engineers to have a website for your product. You just need an iPhone to take some pictures, upload the pictures. Shopify does all the back end for you. Like it's pretty simple, which is great. But as you pointed out, that means that there's a lot more competition out there. And so the ability to have your brand stand out amongst every other company that's launching is what the secret sauce is. It's what's special. It's like, why do people care? So finding product market fit is important, but telling that story, like why should people care? Why did you buy Nike and not any other sneaker? Is the product that much more superior? No. If you cut up the insides and you study the components, it is not much more superior than any other Amazon basic sneaker out there. You buy it because the logo means something. It's your identity. And so you want to really understand who it is you're talking to, who you're marketing to, what makes them tick, and then you can start to build a brand. And for us, it was all about community and entertaining, and like we wanted women to feel sexy and confident in flats. When high heels had always been the sexy and for the confident woman, and flats were for the basic, boring girl, we wanted to say, no, flats are for the confident woman who believes she's strong and she's ambitious and she's a badass. And like she doesn't have to wear heels to look sexy and beautiful and confident. She can wear flats, she can wear booty. And so we captured that moment in her mind, and that is what set us apart from every other flats company on the market.
Hi, my name's Nikki.
For
those of us who don't know too much about, starting a business or that much about like finance or the business world, if you could sum up everything you've said and narrow them down to like the 3 most important pieces of advice, what would they be?
Okay, first of all, I think if you know a lot about business and starting a company, it probably won't be great, right? Like there is an element of just throwing yourself out there and being like naive that will make you great. So that is your superpower. The other thing is I listened to somebody the other day, I think it was like on Instagram Reels or something. I'm like, always passing time listening to that. And some guy said, if I were to give a really smart person who's never swam ever in their life a book and tutorial on how to swim, and they took 3 years to read through the book and study the book on how to swim, and I threw them into the ocean, they would be unable to swim. The only way you can learn how to swim is by jumping into the water and learning from that moment. And that is entrepreneurship. There is no book that you can read, there's no way to prepare before jumping in. You have to just dive right in. And so lack of experience, no problem. No problem, even better, just go in and start. Too much fancy learning and all these fancy books you guys have behind you, forget about it. Just jump right in and start, and that's the best way to learn and grow your business. And we used to say this a lot at Facebook, but the term fail faster was something I love. Fail faster, fail harder. The faster you fail at whatever you're doing, the faster you're going to get to the answer that you're looking for. Don't optimize for the right answer. Optimize for failing as fast as you can, moving as fast as you can, because ultimately you'll get to the answer. And then the other thing we used to say a lot at Facebook too that I love is done is better than perfect. Like, just have a good product. Like, just launch it. Like, had we overinvested in launching the most perfect, stylish slipper for the home, we would have been dead in the water. Because it turns out people wanted this comfortable flat for the outside. We would have spent all of our money perfecting something that people didn't want. So if you launch at 80% done and get feedback from the people, you're going to probably realize that the problem that you're trying to solve is not the problem the customer has, it's something else. And thank God you didn't overinvest your time and money on what you thought was going to be the problem. So fail faster, fail harder, and done is better than perfect.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's literally the fundamental part of our whole curriculum, to fail as quickly as possible, launch as quickly as possible, and talk to as many people as possible. So
That's it. No experience required.
So I know you just said to fail often and to fail hard, but I was just gonna wonder, so you mentioned that the quality of your slippers, the first batch, wasn't that great. Could you talk about refining your design process and learning from your setbacks so that you can bounce back?
Yeah, it was so hard. I mean, first of all, don't ever get into the footwear business. It's the worst business. The only worst business would probably be a restaurant. It's so hard. Because no 2 feet are the same. If you're an 8.5 women, different shoes are going to fit you differently. There's wide, there's narrow, there's the one foot's longer than the other. It's a whole complicated thing. We also can afford full sizes. I mean, listen, if you're going to go into the footwear market, go into sneakers, because at least you can lace them up, and even if the shoe's a little bit too big, you're stuck in it. But when you have loafers, it has to fit perfectly for you not to slip out of the shoe and for it not to be super tight. So, we learned a lot. Unfortunately, by the time we learned all that, we were already so deep into this idea that we were well, we got to keep going with it. But the product was terrible and did not fit right. We launched with 2 shoes in the beginning. One was a loafer and one was a ballerina flat with a big flower on it. And I remember when they arrived, the right and the left flowers were different sizes, and we were panicking because it looked so bad. So we ended up cutting all the roses and super gluing them on so that both pairs looked correct, and then shipping them out like that. Whatever could go wrong went wrong in the first few batches. But we learned a lot, and we also learned how to then have a conversation with our suppliers and direct them more. And again, we would not have learned that had we not failed in our first batch. But ultimately, we had the confidence in knowing, even though these were crappy shoes, people were buying them because we were suddenly avoiding their closets that didn't exist. And so now we're going to go back to perfect the product now that we've found that there's a market for this.
can we all give a round of applause?
And that's so you guys. This is so great. I'm so excited for you guys.
Thank you.
You're already so far ahead.
I think everyone can say that they learned a lot. It just makes everyone super excited to apply this feedback to their own startups.
Great. Now don't go home and telling your mom that I told you guys all to fail and to not read school books and education. It's that learning is for babies. It's really about just being curious on the real world. But this was a great pleasure, a great honor. Sophia, I'm so proud of you, and thank you 3 for starting Launchpad. What an incredible platform and mission, and congrats to all of you guys in the room for being a part of this. Well done.